Oh, that's it. I've had it with this dump. We got no food. We got no jobs. Our pets' heads are falling off. Okay, just calm down.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's time to talk about the sales numbers for February 2020. Sales of comics and graphic novels actually rose dramatically in comparison to a very weak 2019, but there's a reason for that. It has to do with DC's publishing output, and it's not quite as rosy as the numbers might look. Marvel's Dawn of X titles continue dominating the top 10 sales charts, with 4 or 5 titles in the top 10, depending how you look at it. Wolverine #1 was a force of nature, selling over 190,000 units to retailers at a whopping $8 cover price. Batman is back in the top 10, but Hickman's X-Men remains the best-selling ongoing series in comics right now. In this video, I'm first going to go over a report on strategic market trends and what strategies Marvel and DC Comics are employing in the market right now. Then I'm going to go over some of the comic sales numbers and finer details for both publishers and the indie market. Finally, I'll read Comicron's John Jackson Miller's comic sales summary. Now, just a caveat, I cannot talk about the current crisis that's going on right now and that's actually affecting the industry because YouTube has decided that I am not an official news source, even though this is a comic news video, and I would only be talking about it in respect to the comic industry, but I am not an official source, so this will kill my channel. They'll throttle me, and I'll be put on the naughty list, so I can't really talk about it. But if you don't want to hear some of my thoughts on this, Perch from Comics by Perch invited me onto his channel yesterday, and we talked about this in depth and what we believe customers, publishers, and retailers to do to kind of stick together and support the industry through this crisis. I definitely recommend you all go to his channel and watch that video after you watch this one, of course, if you haven't seen it already. First, let's talk about strategic market trends. According to ICV2.com, Marvel's X-Men titles continue to lead the comics market higher in February 2020, with comic sales to comic stores up 8.78% versus sales in February of 2019, while graphic novels were up 3.56% and the combined sales of comics and graphic novels up 7.32%, according to numbers released by Diamond Comic Distributors. The February 2020 increases come against a very weak February 2019, when comic and graphic novel sales were down 5.27%, but are still up a couple of percentage points against February 2018. Year-to-date, comics and graphic novel sales are up 1.35%, with comic sales near flat at up 0.12% and graphic novel sales up 4.44%. While the spread in market share between Marvel Comics and DC Comics hasn't budged much, it's almost 13 share points in February, we do note that the number of DC releases is creeping up toward the Marvel title count the last couple of months. DC released 130 comics and graphic novels in February, only 6% less than Marvel's 139. In February, Marvel published 92 new comics, with 20 of them being #1 issues. They offered 47 graphic novels, led by a sale of Star Wars collected editions from the mid-2010s. Dawn of X Wave 2 is leading the way. The Iron Man 2020 event is also underway, and there was a couple of the End series one-shots that shipped as well. I did see a dramatic increase in overshipped titles in February 2020 versus January 2020. I believe last month they were like 5 or 6, and this month they're like 12, so Marvel definitely pushed hard with overships in February. As far as DC Comics goes, they offered 102 new comics, but that number is misleading due to 16 cardstock variants they offered. The actual new number of comics is 86, with some of those being #1 issues. Now this is versus 59 new comics in February 2019. That's almost a 50% increase in production for DC Comics in February 2020 versus February 2019, but their sales increase were only up 8%, so they definitely weren't proportional. And that's where the dramatic sales increase versus February 2019 comes in. DC Comics produced almost 50% more comics this month, but if you look at the sales increase, it was not proportional, and that doesn't look good, in my opinion. DC Comics also offered 27 graphic novels led by DC Black Label's Harleen hardcover edition that is a beautifully illustrated comic story by Stepan Sajic. As far as DC initiatives go, they're still rolling towards Dark Knight's death metal with their Year of the Villain tie-ins, which are few and far between now. Batman, Superman, and Hell Arisen are still out there leading into that event. DC also produced a series of one-shot comics, including Crimes of Passion and a couple of Bendis books as well. And also overall, just as far as an overall trend, publishers outside the top 10 increased their output, leading to an 18% increase in new comics versus February 2019 across the board. Getting into the sales numbers, according to Newsarama, figures released by Diamond Comic Distributors Friday morning, Marvel's Dawn of X continued to dominate the top of the comic book sales chart by units sold, with Ben Percy, Adam Kubert, and Victor Bogdanovich's Wolverine #1 becoming the latest X relaunch to top sales. Wolverine #1 was followed by the 6th and 7th issues of the core X-Men series, and then 4 other Marvel titles before Batman '88 marks DC's first appearance at number 8. X-Men Fantastic Four #1 and Batman '89 split the remaining top 2 spots. That's a bit misleading because DC Comics offered cardstock variants which adjusted the numbers, but I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. The dollars chart looks similar except with DC landing an additional title in the top 10. Todd McFarlane and Jason Shawn Alexander's Spawn 305 from Image was February's best-selling non-Marvel or DC title at number 38 in terms of units. Stepan Sajic's Harleen collecting the DC Black Label Limited series was February's best-selling graphic novel in both units and dollars. Like I just mentioned, Marvel technically landed 8 books in the top 10, but it's really 7 because DC's cardstock variants, which they're continuing to offer, which makes putting this list together a pain in the butt. Of course, they were led by Wolverine, shipping over 190,000 units, X-Men issues 6 and 7, Gwen Stacy #1, giant-size X-Men Jean Grey and Emma Frost #1, Darth Vader #1, and Amazing Spider-Man 39 rounded out Marvel's comics in the top 10. X-Men #6 actually outsold X-Men #7 by 16,000 units, but issue 6 was an early month release, whereas #7 was late in February. #7 also had a $5 cover price versus the $4 cover price on issue 6, which can also account for some of the discrepancy. Amazing Spider-Man, which has been a perennial top seller in the industry, is now shipping 55 to 60,000 issues monthly. It is a bi-monthly book. Just a couple months back, it was shipping over 80,000 issues. I think that has a lot to do with Nick Spencer's run kind of getting a bit bland lately, but I also think that Marvel Comics have probably released some of the variant cover and party variant ordering schemes attached to that series, which is dropping sales down as well, which we already saw with Immortal Hulk last month. Continuing with Marvel sales, Dawn of X did significant business outside the top 10. X-Men Fantastic Four issue 1 was actually number 11. They also shipped in issue 2. They shipped 56 and 48,000 issues respectively. X-Force, New Mutants, Excalibur, and Marauders all shipped ranging from 42,000 to 37,000 units. The top end actually dropped by 14K, but the bottom end of those units shipped only dropped 3,000. Star #1 last month shockingly almost made the top 10, which I thought was really strange. Star #2 is actually down to 35,000 issues shipped, which makes a lot more sense. And that was with a double ship. It was actually more like 17.5K, much more in line with that character and much more expected. That definitely smelt funny. There must have been a lot of variant covers and a ton of predatory ordering schemes attached with Star #1. Iron Man 2020 is a dud of an event. Issue #2 is already down to 29,000 issues shipped. Forceworks and Machine Man #1 with the 2020 event only shipped 14 and 13,000 issues on issue #1. Just really pathetic. Nobody wanted a Dan Slott-led Iron Man event, and the sales absolutely show it. As far as overships go, besides Star #2, Guardians of the Galaxy #2, Falcon and Winter Soldier #1, Symbiote Spider-Man #3, Conan the Barbarian #13, Conan Battle for the Serpent Crown #1, Ravencroft #2, Atlantis Attacks #2, Avengers of the Wasteland #2, and Robert E. Howard's Dark Agnes #1 all received significant overships in February 2020. Now to DC's very brief appearance in the top 10, Batman '88 and '89 are both top 5 sellers by units when you add together the cardstock variants with the regular cover numbers, shipping around 74,000 each, which is a little bit less than what Tom King was selling, but I do believe we're going to see a significant boost in Batman sales with all the new characters that James Tynion's introducing Joker's new sidekick Punchline was recently introduced, and I know there's another character called, I believe, Clown Hunter that's also being introduced very shortly. And I think those are definitely going to bump the numbers, and you might see Batman go above 100K soon. When you combine the sales of the cardstock variants with the regular cover of Deceased Unkillables #1, that number actually jumps up to 72K, and it is a top 10 seller, but it's still a significant drop in sales from the original Deceased event from Tom Taylor. That comic always sold over 110,000 units per issue. But it does turn out Unkillables isn't even the sequel to Deceased, that Dead Planet is actually the sequel, and that's coming out in the near future. There's only one more DC title that actually shipped over 50,000 issues, and that's Batman Curse of the White Knight #7. It was not a top 10 book, but it was the only other DC comic that shipped over 50,000. DC is really in a bad place right now, to be completely honest. The only thing that's really saving them is Black Label. Due to the increased cover price, the aforementioned Curse of the White Knight, shipping over 50,000. Joker Killer Smile shipped over 42,000 issues. Joker Harley Criminal Sanity also shipped 35,000 issues. Both of those had a $6 cover price. Wonder Woman Dead Earth shipped 35,000 issues with a $7 cover price. As far as the #1 issues for new ongoings or miniseries, Green Lantern Season 2 #1 did a respectable 41,000 issues shipped. Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey shipped 35,000 comics on the debut issue. Hill House Comics Plunge #1 shipped 23,000 issues, and Amethyst #1, which I believe is associated with Young Justice, shipped 18,000 issues on #1. I find that number shocking. I'm shocked it was over 15K, but speculators, I guess. A huge event actually happened in February 2020. Superman sales fell below 40,000 for the first time in years. We're talking years, people. That is a terrible sign. Brian Michael Bendis' time on Superman and Action Comics has been an absolute bloodbath. Bendis also had 2 one-shots released this month. Leviathan Dawn only shipped 28,000 issues with a $5 cover price. Leviathan Rising actually shipped 32,000 issues with a $10 cover price. Event Leviathan #1 shipped 74,000 issues. 28,000 has got to be alarming for DC Comics. He also teamed up with all the other Superman writers that he's brought in with him. Matt Fraction, Greg Rucka, and Jody Hauser for Superman Heroes #1 shipped only 27,000 issues. A Superman special with all the Superman writers on one book. Under 30K, just jaw-dropping. There were 2 other one-shots of note. Batman Pennyworth RIP shipped over 38,000 issues. Crimes of Passion actually went over 20K with a $10 cover price. That has to be seen as a victory for DC Comics. Year of the Villain Batman Superman still doing okay at 41K. Hell Risen actually saw a bump in sales from 31 to 36,000K. This is depressing. Flash dipped below 30,000 issues shipped in February. Wonder Woman sales also fell back to earth after Wonder Woman 750. Also, looking outside of the top 100, some great comic books. Teen Titans, not in the top 100. Batman and the Outsiders, not in the top 100. Hawkman, Robert Venditti's Hawkman is not in the top 100. It only shipped 13,000 issues in February. Just heartbreaking stuff. One of the best comic books on the market. As far as indie comics and graphic novels go, Spawn 305 remains the best-selling indie comic on the market, shipping 35,000 issues. Issue 3 of the Power Rangers Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover from Boom Comics shipped over 28K. Very good numbers right there. As far as graphic novels go, the hardcover edition of DC Black Label's Harleen was the top-selling graphic novel by units and dollars shipped, and Marvel had a special Star Wars collection sale and landed 6 collections from the mid-2010s in the top 10, and that's why we saw a nice big increase in graphic novel sales in February 2020. Now let's look at John Jackson Miller's analysis from Comic-Con for February 2020. Marvel and DC's dollar sales were both up for the month, year over year, and both by more than the market was overall, 12 and 8% respectively. February 2020 marks the 7th growth month in 9 and is the best February performance in 3 years. Orders of individual comic books were also up. Orders rose year over year by 3%, or around 167,000 copies, to 5.94 million units. Wolverine #1, a $7.99 comic, led the periodical charts. Marvel had 8 of the top 10 comics, including the top 7. Gwen Stacy #1 debuted in 4th. A major part of the difference in sales is that February 2019 saw DC still amid its new title austerity initiative. It only released 50 new comic books that month. This February, Diamond says DC released 102, which is probably more like 86 when the cardstock covers are merged. The greatest jump, however, was in the number of graphic novel units sold. That's because Marvel had a major sale on Star Wars collected editions in February, resulting in the unusual situation that no less than 6 titles from 25 and 2016 made the top 10 graphic novels list. That will basically wrap up my February 2020 sales analysis. It looks like there was significant growth in February 2020, but that is misleading. DC Comics offered almost 50% more new comics in February 2020 versus February 2019, and there was also an 18% increase in overall comics offered versus the previous year across the board. The sales increases are not proportional with those numbers, so it is a bit misleading. X-Men continues doing the heavy lifting for Marvel. Dawn of X has been a huge hit so far. Jonathan Hickman's X-Men is the best-selling ongoing series in comics. Wolverine #1 was the best-selling comic book in February 2020. Giant-Size X-Men Jean Grey and Emma Frost #1 and X-Men Fantastic Four #1 were the first 3 titles offered in Marvel's Dawn of X Wave 2, which definitely bumped up sales for the month. I don't think the other Wave 2 books are going to hit quite like that. Hellions doesn't look all that promising. We also have Children of the Atom coming up. That sounds like it's down on arrival. I do think X Factor will sell numbers based on the title, but once people get their eyes on Leah Williams' work, I think that'll be all she wrote, and those numbers will tank almost immediately. Batman and Black Label are really the only thing DC Comics have going for it right now. Deceased Unkillables did well, but it's only a 3-issue miniseries, and they better hope Dead Planet sales are more in line with the original series than Unkillables when it releases later this year. Comic sales in the near future are going to get much worse as we get deeper into this current crisis, which I can't really talk about. Like I said, I did a video with Perch on his channel. If you haven't checked it out yet, I definitely recommend you go over to his channel and view it. We talked about a lot of different initiatives and scenarios as far as the comic industry goes with the current crisis. And that'll basically wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll talk to y'all later. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.